Hello out there, and I was taking a look at some of my older videos the other day and I realized that, man, it has really been a while since I had any new Spydercos on this channel. And I don't mean like new variations or sprint runs or limited editions like you see in front of you, and I don't mean any older models that I was getting into my hands for the first time. I mean brand spanking new for 2018, new releases, new car smell, still on the knife kind of knives. And yeah, it just hasn't happened. You know, looking back at it, I think the only new model for 2018 that I've gotten all year long was the Caribbean, and that was back in June. And there are a number of other models that I'm still looking forward to this year, like the Brower and the Smock and a few others, but they just haven't been released yet. And it's sort of weird to be sitting here, not having any Spydercos to talk about because they really were the foundation for building this channel. My first video ever was about the Sage 5, and I also got a lot of early traction in videos about the Efficient when it came out and the first Para 3. And so I'm sitting here today thinking, like, where are the Spydercos? It just is odd to not be talking about them. And the bad news is I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know where the Spydercos are. I'm still waiting on them. And no idea when they're going to be coming out, but I guess the good news is I do have a couple of sprints, a couple of new limited releases that we can talk about today to sort of fill the void while we're waiting on the really new stuff. All right, so I'm going to bring out a couple of those knives. I'm going to start with one that's going to be focused on a little bit more in future videos. But what we have here, quick look, is the Manbug in V-Toku 2 and Sus 410 steel. And yeah, I know I said in previous videos that I still get caught up on that trendy steel kind of hype train, and that's really what the case was here. I saw the V-Toku, I wanted to try it out, and so I decided to pick this knife up. But the other reason I decided to go with the Manbug versus any of the other models that the V-Toku 2 is on is I wanted to try to implement a small knife like this into my EDC and see how I liked it. So I've thrown this little like Star Wars lanyard on it. I'm going to talk about this more in a future EDC video. But my main purpose for having the Manbug is really to test it and use it. And so the main video about this knife will be a cut test video where, hopefully I'll get a little bit of information about how the steel performs. But more than that, it will be about how I like using a knife that's this small. So if you're not familiar with the Manbug, let's just do a quick size comparison. That's a Para 3 next to the Manbug. So we're talking about a very small knife, and even though it fits really nicely in the hand, it's small, and I'm not sure how I'm going to like using it for a long period of time. So we will find out about that, and I will follow up with that shortly. But now let's get to the focus of this video, the main event. And what we have is a Delica sprint run that very well might be the best Delica that I have ever seen. It is also one of the most expensive ones, and that is a big talking point as well. But what we have in front of us right now is the St. Nick's Knives exclusive Delica 4 with red G10 handle scales and Hap40 Sus 410 steel. And so the big upgrades that you can see from just the basic Delica 4, certainly the G10 and then the steel type, and that's what is really the explanation for the big hike in price from the $70 price point around, at least, that the regular Delica 4 goes for to the $189, $190 that you will pay for this. And, when I saw this knife, I picked it up out of curiosity more than anything else. That's why I wanted to get this knife in my hands. I wanted to know, is this a good piece? Who is it going to be worth that price point for? And did they at least execute it well? And so if you're a collector of either Spydercos or Delicas and you're concerned about spending the money on something that just might not be a very good knife, fear not. This knife is executed beautifully. It does have all of the classic qualities that you would expect a Delica to have, but starting with the G10, which is like one of the main upgrades, man, they really knocked it out of the park with the G10. It's a beautiful piece of G10. One of my concerns, and I didn't really expect this, but I was just a little bit nervous that maybe the traction level and the quality of the G10 would be more like the ambitious and the tenacious than the Paramilitary 2, but the good news is that the quality of it is just pretty much right on point with what you get in the Para 3 and the Paramilitary 2. So good medium to high traction, makes it very comfortable in the hand. And to be honest with you guys, the Delica is already one of the best knives in the hand that you're going to find, and this just makes it even better. So ergonomically, I mean, I can't even think of a knife that might be better than this. It's that good. So it feels excellent. I really like the traction on it. Try to get that focus, try to get a little closer to that. Yeah, so I really like the traction on it. I really, really like the color. It's like this deep red, sort of like a Deadpool red. Yeah, digging that. Just a very good looking contrast with the black hardware and clip and blade. So yeah, they definitely did some nice stuff with that. And then moving to the other upgrade and difference versus the base Delica 4, we have the Hap40 and Sus 410 steel, and it is a black blade. The good news about the black on this knife is that it's consistent. It's all the way across the board. You can see the liners, the lock bar, the back spacer, all of the internals except for the actual internal bar there are black. And yeah, that's really nice to have that uniformity. I know there were a number of people, myself included, who were not necessarily angry, but just a little bit peeved when like the M4 Blade HQ Paramilitary 2 came out and the liners were still satin and some of the hardware, you know, the internal hardware is satin. It just didn't contrast right with the blade. You'd expect everything to be black, and that wasn't the case. And it's just a little bit of a bummer that they chose not to be consistent with it. But you know, here everything is black and it just seems to make sense and it looks very, very nice. Now, one small note about that when it comes to the Hap40 and Sus 410 is, you know, anytime you have laminate steel like this, where you have Sus 410 basically sandwiching the layer of Hap40, and then where this line is here is where like the Hap40 beneath this line is where the Hap40 starts. And that's basically, in my estimation, it's to prevent corrosion. So if you look at it back on this V-Toku 2 knife, which does the same thing with the laminate steel, we can get this focused, you can see where that line is, you know, and it makes sense because you have like a satin blade, and so you have most of the blade protected, and then just the bottom is the actual V-Toku exposed, and so less opportunity for corrosion and any kind of issues. Well, with the blacked out blade, it doesn't really seem necessary to have it sandwiched. You know, I guess in the instance that perhaps the coating wears off, you still have that protection. But honestly, I don't think it's very necessary. And I just wonder if Spyderco didn't just have a bunch of the extra Hap40 Sus 410 blades left over from maybe the Delica Pack-A-Wood run that Knife Center had, or some of the other sprints, and just coated them and used those. I'm not sure. It doesn't really make that big of a difference, but it's just a little bit of a nuance that that's not really necessary. I do think that the line actually adds something to the look of the knife, though. I like it. So, whatever, I guess, huh? So yeah, otherwise, guys, this is a Delica. It's not going to do anything really that a Delica doesn't do. As far as steel goes and steel use, I've liked Hap40. I've never had any issues with it, but I really haven't had that many issues with the VG10 that's on the base model either. So sure, the Hap40 should hold its edge a lot longer, but VG10 is perfectly suitable. So who's this knife for? 100%, I think if you are the Spyderco collector who is maybe holding off on this because, again, you weren't sure about making the investment due to quality issues or anything like that, I'd say have no fear. You're really going to like this knife. And again, if you spend the money and you get a knife that you like, at the end of the day, I think as time goes, you get more and more comfortable with that purchase. And, you know, once the money's gone, you just feel better about it over time. And I think that will definitely be the case for people who, like I said, are collectors. But if you're just looking for a Delica, you know, you're just looking for maybe a Sprint, or you're just looking for a good Spyderco, there's a lot of other options, guys. There just are. You know, $190 is a lot of money to pay. And even though this is a better knife than the $70 Delica 4 that you'll get for the base model. It's not 2.5 times as good. You know, if I wanted a Delica 4 for my collection and I really wasn't that picky and I wasn't a collector, I would just buy a Delica 4 and a pair of 3 and be right around the same price point. You know, when you think about it, that's really what you could do. You know, some upgrades, some sprints, especially the USA made ones, in my estimation, seem to be a little bit more economical. You know, I made a video at one point about how sometimes just doing the upgraded model, getting that upgraded model, makes too much sense to not do. I think the Native 5 M4 was the best example of that. It was like $10 more expensive than the basic S35VN model with the G10. So why wouldn't you do that, you know? And that was my argument in that video. But in some cases like this, I don't know. I just don't necessarily see it. You know, you could get a pair of 3 sprint run, the one that was an S90V and has these carbon fiber scales, for around the same price. And for that, you get a compression lock and you get the S90V steel and USA made quality. Not to say that the Delica isn't great quality. It's just different, and you know, people have preferences for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different mindsets. And so I think that if you're not the collector who has to have this knife, or if you're just not like really gung-ho about the G10 and the Hap40, maybe spend your money elsewhere. You know, it's just my take on it. There's a lot of other stuff, a lot of other really good Spydercos. Not to say that they didn't absolutely deliver, but they are asking a premium price for this knife when the regular Delica is pretty darn cheap compared to it. So that's really all I got, guys. That's my take on it. Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Let me know your opinion about this knife and if you think it might be for you and who you think it might be for. All right, I appreciate your time, though, and I will talk with you soon. Have a good one.